Now, it's been a really big week, hasn't it? The UK government has set out its net zero strategy, said to be the most comprehensive plan of any major industrialised country. And with just days before the global gaze fixes firmly on Glasgow for COP26, is the strategy a good example to the world? I'm going to speak to you first, Mohamed, on this. It took a long time to get this document, didn't it? We kept waiting. It's a big, fat document outlining the government's plan. Is it worth the paper it's written on?
I don't think so. And I don't think anyone really wants to see a far-off net zero pledge that will supposedly balance the UK's emissions budget by mid-century, and by using tools, including unproven techno fixes. I think what we want to see is actually what the UK is going to do today, tomorrow, and every year to come to eliminate its major sources of emissions, including its continued fossil fuel production and use. To be able to address the current climate emergency, we need real plans, real solutions, real finance, and real zero for an urgent, just transition. So
clearly, you don't think that is
2050.
Clearly, you don't think that's what this document represents. And what about you, Jen? I mean, the UK government likes to think of itself as a world leader here in its climate pledges. Is that delusional?
Well, you're right. It's been a big week. I think about a dozen or more policies were put out the last day, totaling over 1,800 pages. So we're all a bit in digestion mode right now and trying to figure out what it all means. It's definitely better than where we were. And it's definitely puts the UK in good stead when we compare it to other countries. It's not enough to get us to net zero. And there's still some policies in there missing, especially around investment. But we do have to admit, this is a serious piece of work that looks across the government in all of the departments and looks at what they can do and what their targets should be. So it's better than where we were, and it's a good step forward. It's just not quite enough yet.
And Mohamed, the key to all of this, isn't it, is credibility, because if government policy is credible, then you get private investment pouring in, and then you can encourage individuals to change their behaviour. And how far away do you think the government is from being credible on climate?
I think they've included some good stuff. So the strategy, of course, includes investment in expanding electric vehicles, something I think we should celebrate and welcome. They start on offshore wind. They start on the creation of green hydrogen. All these things are important. But what the challenge that we will face is actually whether we can be able to even mobilize the funding that is required to be able to implement this strategy. I think this strategy is still seriously unfunded. It doesn't get us to zero. It doesn't get us to zero within the time frame that will allow us to hold global warming to below 1.5. And it needs the support of Treasury if it's going to be effective. I think what is going to help us is if we can actually mobilize the world government behind the strategy and be able to revise the strategy so that it gets us to real zero within a time frame that we can actually hold global warming to below 1.5. And so without funds that will actually allow this strategy to be delivered, I don't think it will live up to the hype. So the government is actually in danger of acting and promising us grand promises, but not delivering. And I think if it does that right, I think it will inspire the rest of the world, and we'll see a race to the top.
And Jen, some of the sectors that Mohamed was mentioning there that are high points that the government's focused on are already profitable, aren't they? How does the government go about encouraging money into technologies which are still quite experimental, not yet profitable?
That's the big question. So there's a role for government to play in terms of providing initial investment. There's also a role for government to play in terms of an investment bank or a way to sort of nurture those technologies until they're commercially viable. There is a huge piece of this missing, which is how are they going to mobilize private investment into this? So as Mohamed has said, it's underfunded right now. We don't know where all this money is coming from. There's sort of an idea that the private sector is going to help out, but without a strategy to mobilize that private finance, we're not sure how we're going to hit most of these targets or fulfill a lot of these promises in the net zero plan.